Hi, everybody. This is Virginia Milner coming to you for the DeKalb County Library System again. And we have another tutorial. Yay! So what I'm going to show you today is so easy and very simple. And it just comes out really cute. I had seen somebody do a chain like this a long time ago, and I thought, I don't know, because it's all made of jump rings and beads, but it really works. It's so cute. And so I decided to make a bracelet out of it. And so I just used the jump rings and the beads for the bracelet part, and then made a nice decorative clasp to use as the actual focal piece. So I hope you can get a good view of that. So it's an S clasp that's decorated with wrapped beads. And the rest of it is linked jump rings and beads. And I used 20 gauge wire. I wasn't sure about that either. I thought, that might not be strong enough, but it is. I've worn this thing several times and it holds up. I've tugged on it. Don't tug too hard because, it's not soldered, so you want to make sure of that. If you're so inclined, you can always put a little bit of glue on the little openings, but I haven't found that to be necessary. And the biggest thing that you want to make sure of, well, first of all, let me go ahead and get you settled into what you're going to need. Round nose pliers, cutters, a Sharpie or some other kind of cylindrical item to make your jump rings, because we're making our own. You can always buy them if you want to, but I like to show you how to make your own components. So we're going to make our own jump rings. Beads, whatever kind of beads you want. This one I used 7mm beads. They do need to have a fairly large hole, which is why I went with wooden beads, because it's really hard to find something that is cut with a nice naturally large opening, a large hole in it, without it being a really large hole. So I'm using wooden beads, and I use these 7mm beads for this one. And for our actual demonstration, I'm using these little 6mm green pine beads, pine wood beads, because I thought they were pretty. That's why. And so we're going to do that, and then I'm going to make the clasp with one of the beads and a couple of little crystals on the end. And we're going to wrap that up. We're going to make that our focal piece, and that's going to be our bracelet. Easy, probably one of the easiest things I've done. The other last couple of things that you're going to need, again, 20 gauge wire. You're going to need a 24 gauge wire to do the wrap, to wrap the beads onto your clasp. And I'm just using this little rubber mallet because it helps strengthen the jump rings and keep them from coming open. You can also use a stronger size wire, 18, 16. Be careful about the size of the wire, because 2 of these have to go inside of the bead, and you still want some movement. You don't want it to be stiff. You want them to be able to string through the holes in your bead and still be relaxed. So I tried this doing well, let me get down here to the other camera so you can get a better view of what I'm talking about, and we can get going. So I tried this using two jump rings on each side, and it worked, but it was a really tight fit, and I had to go down to 22 gauge wire, which I don't suggest. I would suggest that you use 20 gauge or a smaller gauge, meaning stronger, thicker wire. So 20 gauge, 18 gauge, 16 if you can find beads to accommodate that size wire. Any of those will work just fine. And the the smaller the gauge, the stronger the wire. Just a reminder of that. So we're going to use, or today I'm going to use these 16 or these 6mm beads. Now, the biggest thing that you want to remember when you're making your jump rings is that they have to be big enough so that they can fit on your beads and still have some space. Let me take this off of here so you can get a better look. And still have some space in the center in order to have some movement. So here's my other one that we just saw on the display. And this is the 7mm bead. And I made the jump rings you want them to be at least 4 to 5 millimeters bigger than the size of your bead, so that there's space in between here for it to move around very easily. And so what I did was use a Sharpie that gave me a 12mm jump ring to go with my 7mm beads, because 2 of them are going to go inside. And if you can see that, you can see that even though there's a lot of space in between the beads and the inside of the ring, when you turn it on its side, you can see that these 2 pieces of wire are not that far apart. So you need enough space for them to all exist inside of the hole of your bead. So what I would suggest, my measurement was to go with at least 4 millimeters bigger than my bead. And it also depends on the hole in your bead. This is not an exact science. Basically, what you need to do is make sure you have enough space in the hole of your bead for your wire to live, and live freely and comfortably. So you might want to test out some different Sharpies or items that you want to use to make your jump rings. I started out trying to see if I could do it with just the back of my pliers. Not big enough. Then I tried this ink pen. This worked. It's about maybe a millimeter smaller, maybe 2 millimeters smaller than the one I decided to go with. So it was about 10 millimeters, and it worked. But the look that I wanted a little more space in between. And I mean, this looks so neat. I love it. So I gave it 12 millimeters, went with this one. I tried this one. This gave me about 15 millimeters. That was really big, which also looked pretty, but I finally went down to this size. Anyway, there was a lot of trial and error, and that gave me the 4 to 5 millimeters bigger than my bead, because my bead, the hole in my bead is probably not going to be more than, oh, you know what, let's just see, where's my ruler? Well, I can kind of tell. The hole in my bead is probably about 4 millimeters. 4 millimeters, and I have a 12 millimeter jump ring. So that gives you an idea. It's one of those things that you're going to have to play with and see what the look is that you want for your bracelet. And I'm going to give you a preview because I've already put most of this together. This is even smaller beads with the same size jump rings, and see the difference. Big difference in the way they look. And this just pops right off of the page here. I mean, it's awesome. And this, it's more, you see more of the beads. Anyway, So that's it. We're just going to play with this one. It's such a neat thing. And then, of course, we're going to make our nice little clasp. Let's see if I can, here we go. That we're going to use for a focal piece. And it's just an S clasp. There. I don't know if you can see it down here because it's pretty much the same color. There we go. Isn't that neat? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make this nifty, very easy bracelet that just requires making our own jump rings and linking them into the beads, and then we're going to make a clasp. So let's do this. So the first thing that you want to do is make your jump rings. Each one of these jump rings takes about an inch. For this size, takes about 1 1/8 inches of wire. And again, it just depends on what size you decide to go with, but that's what I determined from the size that I made. And so what I do is just cut a long piece of wire. Or you can cut it from off the spool. Those of you who are getting kids are going to have a nice long piece of wire, and you can just leave that wire together and make as many of those rings as you need. So I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to start the bend in my wire. I'm going to keep a little tail on here that I can use to hold on to while I'm making my jump ring. So I just hold it nice and tight against my pen, against my Sharpie. And I just rotate until I have one full ring. And then I just keep going. Just keep rotating. Until I have several jump rings. So what I'm going to do, what does that give me? 1, 2, let me keep going until I can get at least 3 of them out of here. And again, you're going to have to measure. The good thing about this is you can just keep trying it on your wrist until you get it to the size that you want, or the size of the wrist of the person that you're making it for. And then you can make more jump rings if you need more and add more beads. So I've got 1, 2, 3. Let's see how many I've got here. Where are my other glasses so I can see what I'm doing? So I've got several rings here. So now all I have to do is cut them off. Take my pliers, my cutter pliers, snip. There's one. Back it up against the end of the ring. And if your pliers are strong enough to do it, you can cut them all at once. Snip. And there they are. So I've got 3 nice jump rings. Very good. So then the next thing I like to do, kind of get them closed up. And then I'll take my little rubber mallet and kind of pound them a little bit so that they get stronger. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to talk while I do it because my computer decides that that's too much noise and it just shuts off the sound, which is fine. So here we go. And I flip them over. That's it. And I just use my little dollar store mallet. Doesn't have to be anything special. Here we go. Here are my jump rings. So what I'm going to do now is link everything together. And I've got a bunch of these. Let me open them up. Oh, let me show you how to open. Okay. So the way that you want to open these up, you don't want to pull them apart. You want to open it. You want to flip it until it's kind of a flip top opening. Boop, just like that. Let's do it again. Here we go. So nicely open. Okay, so now I want to put them on my beads. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to put one bead on and the second bead on and a jump ring on. Let me go ahead and close this. It doesn't have to be open to fit on. Now, the way I like to do my jump rings is push it a little bit past the other end so that it's not quite together, and then kind of wiggle it a little bit until it's flush against the other end of my ring so that they're nicely together. So I've got my two beads on. I'm going to put my other jump ring on, and I'm going to close. Do the same thing again. See how there's a little space in there? I'm going to push it until they're one's going past the other, and then just adjust it until they're nice and flush against each other. And again, if you feel more comfortable doing it, you can put a little dot of glue on there, let it dry, and that takes a little time. Let it dry, and then that should hold that together if you feel like you need that extra security. Okay. So now take another jump ring, and I'm going to put it through my bead, one of the beads. So now I have a link. I did this one wrong. I'll correct that. Let me take that off of there. It shouldn't go through the ring. It should go through the bead. Virginia. So let me take that off. And instead of putting it through the ring, I put it through the other side of the bead, like so. Close it up. Be sure it's nice and tight. And then I go on to the next one. So I can open that again, put another bead on, and close. Again, making sure it's nice and tight. Grab another ring, slide it on the bead, and close. Or I can put another bead on and get ready to attach that. So you can see the beginnings of my chain. Neat, huh? So easy. What could be easier than this? Now I'm going to go ahead and take the one that I've already done, and let's put that together. All right. First of all, try it on. See how much I need. Isn't that neat? I love it. Let's see if these three will be enough or too much. Slide that on. Close it up. Awesome. Let's see what we have here. Is that enough? Oh my goodness, I think that might just work. Oh my gosh. So embarrassing to have this stuff, do this on camera so that everybody can see me fumbling. But here we go. So I have a good maybe 3/4 of an inch of space to house my clasp. So that's what I'm going to go with. I think that's enough, but in case I need to add another one, the beauty of this is that I can. I have more beads. I have more jump rings already. And now I'm going to show you how to make your clasp. So we've got the main chain of our bracelet. And let's make our clasp. So what I'm going to need for that, it depends on how big you want it to be. This one that I made came out to, and I've already kind of shaped it. I shaped it so that it's got a little curve to it so that when it goes on my arm, it's curved and not sticking out on the sides. So anyway, when I finish, it's about 1.25 inches, a little over 1.25 inches, maybe 1 3/8 inches. And for that, I used 5 inches of wire. You just need enough to accommodate the beads that you're using. So my beads are taking up about, I think, 3/4 inch of space. Not quite, about 5/8 inch of space. So I'm going to say an inch for my beads, another inch on each side for my shepherd's hooks. But I'm going to give myself a good 4 inches just to be safe. Matter of fact, I'm going to give myself 4.5. If I have to cut some off, that's fine. And I would suggest if you think that something's going to be maybe 3.5 inches, that you give yourself 4.5 to 5 inches. Then that way, if you need to cut off an end, it's big enough for you to use it for something else. That's the key. You don't want to have to cut off 1/4 inch on each side or something like that, because that's just wasteful. And I hate that. I hate it. So I'm giving myself 4.5 inches of wire. I'm going to put my beads on. And I'm starting with, I'm using a 4x6 millimeter, 4x6 millimeter rondelle, along with my 6 millimeter beads. And I decided to go with something that was a little a neutral shade to go with this, because I thought that would be pretty. So that's what I went with. And let's measure. It's hard to tell when it's flipping and flopping around what size you actually have. And I was almost right. Well, I have about 1/2 inch. By the time I put these together, it's about 1/2 inch of space. So I have plenty to make my shepherd's hooks. So what I'm going to do, I'm taking that off so they don't fall all over the place, is make a tiny loop on one side of my wire. So I'm going to grab the tip of my wire with the tip of my pliers. I don't want anything sticking out the back there. I'm going to anchor it with my fingers because it's going to fight me a little bit. See, it wants to slide off. But once I get a little bend in it, then I can work it. Make the tiniest loop possible. I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way around, not all the way closed, and about 3/4 of the way closed. Going until, here we go. And then I do need flat pliers for this. I didn't think I needed them. but I do. So I'm going to take my flat pliers and I'm going to squeeze from the bottom where it's open towards the head of my loop, the top of my loop, until I have a little nub. There we go. Yeah. And now I'm going to make my shepherd's hook. Now what I could, there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can go ahead and make your shepherd's hook, then put your beads on and wrap, then do your wrap and then put your beads on and then wrap on the other side and then do the other shepherd's hook. Or you could go ahead and put your beads on and wrap it and make the shepherd's hook at the end, which that may be the easier way to do it. And I'm going to show you that way. I could show you both, but I think I'm going to show you that way. Let me snip that off. So let's go ahead and put our beads on. Well, we'll wrap first. So I'm going to take my 24 gauge wire. I'm going to give myself about 5 inches, which is more than enough. Measure it over here, give myself about 5 inches. You can just eyeball it. You don't really have to measure. Now I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way down. I want to make sure I have at least a good inch for my shepherd's hook. And on the other side of this is going to take about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to scoot it down 1/3 of the way down my wire to make my wrap. So I'm going to start with a little tail. I'm going to lay my wire against my 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to start wrapping. I want it to be nice and close and nice and tight, and just wrap it around. And I like this little tail here because it gives me some leverage. It gives me something to hold on to. Okay. And if you see that your wraps aren't as close together as you want them, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Oh, I just pulled that right off its stand. Get back on there. Okay. All right. If you see that your wraps aren't as close together as you want them, you can just use your fingers to push the wraps together, or you can use your pliers to squeeze them together. I like to do that every once in a while, but I like to give myself a good 3 to 4 wraps around. And I've got 3, so that's enough there. There we go. And 7 in here. You get it to focus. It's not liking me today. Wow, it's really being temperamental. But anyway, I've got my 3 wraps on here. And now I'm going to introduce my beads. Clamp this down a little bit so it's not rolling around quite so much. It's going to roll, but. So now I'm going to put my beads on. Start with my crystal, one wooden bead, and another crystal. And the way I'm wrapping this is I'm going to take my wire, I'm just going to bring it up over the first bead and wrap it in between that bead and the next. Push that nice and tight, and then bring that over the second bead. And you can put these beads on one at a time if you don't want to have to worry about them sliding all over the place, which I'll do. Okay, bring that up over the second bead, wrap it around, introduce the third bead. Push them together. Bring it up over that third bead and wrap it around the wire. Now, once I get those on, I can adjust it the way I want it to look. So there are my 3 wraps. And now I want to just wrap it on the other side like I did this side. I'm going to give myself 3 wraps. 1, 2, and 3. And there we go. I can cut it off. I like to kind of overextend it so that there's already a nice little curve on there when I get ready to cut, so that when I push it down, it's already going in the direction of the wire the way I want it to. So I like to hold on to my tail so it doesn't go flying across the room. Ta-da. And then push down that little end so it doesn't catch on anything. And then go to the other side and do the same thing. Wrap that around a little bit more and remove it from the 20 gauge tail and our stem. And hold on to my little tail, clip it off, and use my flat pliers to push that end down. Now, I want that a little tighter. There we go. Make sure they're placed the way I want them. I have well over 1 inch on each side, so I know I have plenty to make my shepherd's hook. So there we go. So there's my centerpiece. And I want about 1 inch for my shepherd's hook. So I'm going to measure that just past my wrap. There's my inch. Clip that off. What's left? See, I've got about 3/4 of an inch of wire. What can I do with that? I can actually use that for something. Could have slid it down and then not had to cut it on both sides, but I didn't. Let's measure again. Make sure I've got my good inch here. Yes. And now let's make my tiny little loop. So I'm just going to grab the tip of my wire with the tip of my pliers, check and make sure there's no wire sticking out the back. Don't clamp down too hard, just enough to keep that wire in between. Because if you clamp down really hard, number 1, you might mar the wire. And number 2, it might flip right out because it doesn't like being clamped. So just give it enough pressure that it'll hold in between the clamps of your tool. See how it's trying to slide out, and then turn. Once you get a nice little turn in there, you have something to work with when you have that little ledge, and it gets easier to make the rest of your loop. So I'm going to just rotate till I have a 3/4 inch loop, or a 3/4 of a loop, not completely closed, but almost. Then I'm going to grab my flat pliers and I'm going to squeeze from the bottom where it's open to the top of my wire. And just be nice and patient. You don't want to try to squeeze too hard or it's going to rebel. So there we go. I have a teeny tiny little loop. So then I'm going to take my pliers, and it depends on what size you want. I mean, I could make a bigger hook. For instance, I could use the Sharpie, or I could use the ink pen. It just depends on the size hook that I want. I am going to use the back of my pliers because I don't necessarily want it to be too much bigger than this. So that's where I'm going. I'm going to go right there at the base of my loop, all the way to the back of my pliers. And this is what I call the bottom, where the opening is. This is the top. And I'm going to rotate around towards my beads with the bottom hanging here. And I'm going to rotate away from the bottom of my loop. See how it still slides? That's okay. Not to worry. Until I have a shepherd's hook. Ta-da. I'm going to go to the other side. And I'm going to clip that down to that inch. And you can eyeball it. You don't really have to measure. And now this one, let's cut that off. Hold on to my tail. Oh, look at that. I can do lots of stuff with that little piece. So now what I want to do is make another little tiny loop. Now this loop is going to be on the same side as it's going to be going in the direction of the bottom of my shepherd's hook, because the big loop is going to go in the opposite direction. So the little loop is going towards the little loop on the first side. Again, make a little bend. Then it's easier to turn once you got that in there. Give yourself a three-quarter loop. Take your flat pliers, squeeze that loop closed. So you have a little nub there. And then let's make my shepherd's hook. All the way to the back. There's the bottom, there's the top. And I'm going to rotate until I get to rotate towards the top of the other side of my shepherd's hook. And there we go. And there's my clasp. Neat, huh? I love these. I like decorative clasps. And then you can adjust a little bit if you wanted to bend back a bit so that it has a little graceful curve. Nice. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is attach this. And I think that I have more than enough rings on here. As a matter of fact, I am pretty sure I do, because if I put this on and attach, because I need another jump ring to attach this, I think it's going to be a little on the big side. Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious. And that is the beauty of this kind of bracelet, because I can take off what I don't need. Forget it. Okay, here we go. So here is the way it's going to look. Now I know that this is going to be a little bit bigger than I like. I like mine very close, and I only have about an inch of space here with a little, I need a little bit extra for moving room. And I'm going to need to put 2 more jump rings on the end. So I am taking one of these off. And I'm going to make my jump rings. My jump rings are going to be smaller than these because they don't need to be that big. So what I'm going to use for those jump rings is the back of my pliers. Or I could use this little pin, but I think it's going to be big enough to just have a small jump ring on the ends. It just needs to be able to clear that hole. So let's try this, shall we? Let's see if that is going to be big enough. It may be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but let's try it out. A little jump ring. Let's clip that off. Yeah, I mangled it. Let's do it again. All right. I like to give it a little bend first. Give it a little bend. Then I have something to hook onto when I put it on my pliers. And all the way to the back because it needs to be big enough to go through my beads. Let's make my loop. Okay, let's cut that off. Let's see if that's big enough to go through this bead. It's looking a little small to me. But let's try it. This will give you an idea of what I meant when I said it needs to be a certain size. So let's see. See? Too tight. Actually, it works, but it is a little tight and very, very close to my bead. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to go with this little pin. That's a good 2 or 3 millimeters bigger. I'm just going to take my pin. I'm going to wrap my wire around. There we go. Flip it. So now I have a slightly smaller jump ring than the others in order to use for my clasp. And let's just try this out. Now for my clasp, just for the sake of safety, because this is always going to be tugging a little bit, I'm going to push these past each other so that they're overlapping instead of together. Here we go. You can also go 1.5 times around just to be safe. So there is my slightly smaller jump ring that's going to be used for this. The other solution, well, there isn't another solution, that's it. Except that you can always put some glue on there if you want. So there we go. So let's try that, see what it looks like. That's it. I need to take this one off the other side because I don't need it. Again, that is the beauty of this particular type of bracelet. So I can take that off, try it on again. And yes, I can see that when I put the other jump ring on, that's going to be big enough. So let's make another jump ring. Okay. Let's roll that around there. Now I have my complete circle. Right. And clip. This little tail is going to go flying, so I'm going to put my finger there. Boop. There you go. The jump ring. Push that together so that they're kind of overlapping a little bit like that. Open it up, slide it on. And again, you can do the glue if you're more comfortable with that. I can understand that. Or you can make a split ring, which is the kind of the equivalent of overlapping a jump ring, except that you have more repetitions of the loop. So there. All right, let's try this baby on. And I'm going to bend that a little bit so that it conforms to my wrist. When you put this on, you don't want it sticking straight out. You want it to kind of have a little curve, like your wrist has a little curve. There we go. So you can see it's a little slightly curved. Put them on. Trying to do it on camera, and it's a challenge. A challenge. Okay. Come on. Can you see that? I think it's visible. I'm starting to wonder if it's too tight. Let's see. That hangs down that way. And this comes up over to it. I might need another ring. I might need another ring after all. I always like mine tighter. I don't like a lot of dangle room for whatever reason. I don't know why I don't. I just don't. Oh goodness. I might need another link. It's not cooperating with me. Yeah, I think I need another link. I can see it's just barely trying to make it around there. And I'm notorious for making them a little. Now, I can do one of two things. I can either make another link, or I can make these a little bigger. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these off and put these others on that I already had, the bigger ones. And let's see if that does it. So then overlap. Let's see if that makes a difference. We'll certainly make it longer. I'm just really, really not particular about the great big one. A lot of dangle space. Let's see if this works. Okay. Other side. Hmm. Might need another link. And then I know it's going to be very loose, which I am not a fan of. What I could do is put two small links on each side. And give it a little chain effect. This is really annoying. I have to do this on camera where you can see me struggling to get my fit. And doing it on camera just gives it an extra element of stressfulness for me. It's not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be fun and light and airy. It's right there. I can see it. Just can't get it to conform. Okay, what I'm going to do is open this a little. Let's open it up. Close it back when I get it on. There. Should have done that in the first place. What an idiot you are, Virginia, sometimes. Ah, finally. My goodness. It is a little snug, but that's the way I kind of like it. Give that my little curve so it lays nicely. Okay, there we go. There it is. Oh, that did come out nice. After all of the fumbling. Okay, close that up a little more. Close that up a little more. Here we go. There's my bracelet. Pull this back a little. Let's see, right on top of it. Get a better view. There we go. There it is. Light on the subject. Ta-da! There it is. There's the other side, or you can always wear it like that. So there's my bracelet, and there's my clasp. It's entirely up to you how you decide to wear it. Isn't that neat, though? Oh, where's my clasp? Oh, I took the clasp off of this one, otherwise I put it on. But isn't that awesome? Let's look at it on the big camera. Okay, before I go to the big camera, I decided to show you the other one as well. There we go. You can see the difference in the spaces between the beads now. This is a 7mm with a 12mm jump ring, and this is a 6mm with a 12mm jump ring. There we go. So let's go to the other camera. Take a peek. There they are. Isn't that neat? Here's the one. see that. And here's the other one. It's hard to get twist one so you can actually see. Ta-da! And ta-da! Easy, very, very easy. Make the number of rings that you need, attach them, keep trying it on to make sure that it's going to fit your wrist or the wrist of the person that you want it to fit, because what you can do is just use a ruler. If you know the person's wrist size is 7.5 inches, just use a ruler. Keep adding until you get to the size that you need. Once you finish, you make your decorative clasp, which you saw was also very easy to make and very pretty. And you put them together. That's it. This one is one of those that pretty much anybody can make. You can have a mother-daughter moment, father-daughter moment, whoever wants to make it. Very simple, a lot of fun, very satisfying. And again, I wouldn't go any smaller in size than 20 gauge. And then go down from there in the sizes of the gauge. 18, 16, just make sure that the holes in your beads are compatible with the amount of wire that you need to put through there. And again, I tried this with, I usually do double, I'm cutting my head off. I usually do double jump rings, just because I figure if we have one jump ring fail, the other one will hold everything together. But I didn't have beads with holes big enough to accommodate anything more than 4 22 gauge jump rings, and that was just too thin. I really didn't make me feel secure at all. So I went back to the 20 gauge. Whenever you make them, just go ahead and hammer your little rings. The more you work with it, the more that it work hardens and it strengthens the wire. And so far, so good with this one. Has worked very, very nicely and very well. But you can also go to the 18 or the 16 gauge, as long as the holes in your beads will support that size wire. That's it. That's the end of our tutorial for the day, and I hope you really liked it, because I enjoyed this immensely. I wanted to give you something that was super quick, super fast. Oh, and another thing, great earrings. This makes a great earring. I mean, it's so simple. All you need is the rings and with the beads hanging off of them. You put them on an ear wire. So neat. So go ahead and try this. See if you like it, and let me know what you think. See, that would make a great earring. Just several of those. Anyway, let me know what you think of the design itself, what you think of the clasps. I love hearing what you think about these clasps, the crazy clasps that I do. And let me know if you have any suggestions. That's always fun. If there's something that you would like to see me do, let me know. That's how we got our lava bead kits. That's how we got our men's bracelets and men's pieces of jewelry, because somebody suggested it. Somebody said, what have you ever thought of doing? So if you have any suggestions, I am open to listening. If it's feasible and something that I can do on camera, that doesn't seem like it would be too complicated for people to follow, because I like to try to keep it from somewhere between beginning and intermediate. I'll do it. I'd love to do it. That's one of the joys of being able to do these virtually, is because you have the option to go back and look at it again and again and see what you may have missed. And there's always the email if you have any questions. I've answered some questions that have been very good questions. So far, I haven't had any questions that weren't very good. So there's always that. You can email me at jewelryjen, that's JEWELRYGIN 20 @gmail.com, and ask me any questions that you want. If I have the answer, I will give you the answer. If I don't, I will try to look it up, or if I feel that it's something that you need to look up, I will try to direct you as to where to look. But hopefully I'll hear from you, because I really do like your feedback, and I like your questions, and I like to know what you're thinking, because I miss my in-person classes. Oh, I don't get to see people. So anyway, this is it. That's the end of this particular tutorial. And until next time, stay safe, enjoy your week, and enjoy your weekend, and so on.